When I opened my front door that afternoon, the past 13 years stood therein a pair of polished shoes and a borrowed smile. My son Liam was holding 2 designer suitcases. Beside him, his wife Sloane clutched her phone like it was a shield. They looked like travelers who had lost their way, except they were standing on my porch. And boys, Idaho, the same porch they once swore they would never step on again. "As your son," Liam said, his voice firm but nervous, "I'm entitled to some of this. We're moving in. You have all this extra space anyway." He said it like a statement of law, not a request. Behind him, the winter sun flickered through the bare trees, lighting the dust in the air between us. For a long second, I just studied them. The expensive coats, the practice posture, the faint scent of desperation that even perfume could not cover. I could have slammed the door. I could have screamed, demanded to know why now, after more than a decade of silence, they were here. But instead, Ismi led, a calm, steady kind of smile that made Liam hesitate. "Well," I said softly, "isn't this interesting?" Sloane's eyes darted to his uncertain. Liam opened his mouth to speak again, but I lifted a hand the same way I used to when he was 5 and drawing on my walls with markers. "Come in," I said. "Let's talk about family." He looked relieved. He shouldn't have been, because that was the moment my story stopped being about heartbreak and started being about boundaries. This is the story of how my estranged son returned after 13 years only when I became a millionaire. Stay until the end and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My name is June Mercer. I'm 62 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that being a good mother meant giving without limits. I worked as a librarian at Thesmall Public Library in Boise for almost 30 years. I raised Liam on my own after his father passed away when he was 12. Back then, we shared everything: books, pancakes on Sunday mornings, and dreams that felt big enough to fill the sky. But when Liam turned 22, something changed. He said he wanted to make his own name to escape the small-town life that made him feel ordinary. He told me with the cold confidence of someone trying to prove himself that successful people didn't cling to their past. I watched his past, and then he was gone. 4 years, my mailbox stayed empty. Holidays passed like quiet ghosts. I sent letters that came back unopened. There was no graduation invitation, no wedding call, not even a single message. When I got pneumonia one winter, I told myself he was busy, that he'd remember eventually. He didn't. Then last year, something unexpected happened. After decades of scraping by on a modest pension, I won the state lottery. 20 million. I didn't shout it from the rooftops. I didn't even tell the neighbors. I just paid off my mortgage, started volunteering at a community reading program, and planted a garden out back. I wanted peace, not attention. But money has a strange way of calling people home, especially the ones who left you behind. When Liam showed up with Sloane in those suitcases, I realized he hadn't returned for me. He'd returned for the number in my bank account. I stepped aside, letting them walk in. The sound of their shoes against my wooden floor felt louder than it should have, like each step carried years of distance. The house was quiet, except for the soft ticking of the grandfather clock. Liam paused in the hallway, glancing at the framed photographs on the wall. They all stopped at the same point in time as college graduation. The last moment we'd smiled in the same picture. Sloane followed his gaze, her expression polite but detached, like a guest inspecting a rental property. "This place is smaller than I expected," she said, running a hand along the banister. Cozy, cozy. That word stung more than it should have. I had spent decades paying off this house one overtime shift at a time. Every room held a story. The kitchen, where Liam learned to make scrambled eggs. The porch where I read to him on summer nights. To her, it was just square footage. Liam's eyes swept across the furniture, as if mentally appraising it. I wondered if he was calculating what it might sell for. "Sit," I said finally, gesturing to the sofa. It surprised me how naturally the command came out. For the first time in years, he obeyed without question. I took my place in the armchair opposite them, a comfortable distance between us. "Well," I said quietly, folding my hands in my lap, "let's catch up. Tell me, Liam, what brings you home after 13 years of silence?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He didn't have an answer. Not yet, but I could see it written all over his face. Money had opened the door that love could not. Sloane was the first to speak. "June, we know it's been a long time," she began, her voice dripping with practiced warmth. "But family is family. We've missed you. We want to rebuild what we lost." Rebuild. That word almost made me laugh. You can't rebuild a bridge you set on fire yourself. Liam cleared his throat, jumping in to play his part. Mom, when I heard about your good fortune, I was worried. You shouldn't be alone with all that responsibility. People might try to take advantage of you. I stirred my coffee slowly. Take advantage? I repeated. Like showing up after 13 years with luggage and a speech about family. Liam looked down. Sloane smiled tightly, pretending not to har the edge in my voice. We just want what's best for you, she said. I leaned forward slightly. That's sweet of you, but let's skip the warm-up and get to the main act. They both froze. I let the silence stretch just long enough for discomfort to settle in. Tell me, I said, voice calm but sharp. Exactly how much of my good fortune do you think you're entitled to? Their expressions faltered. In that moment, I saw the mask slipping, the calculation behind the charm. The performance was over. Reality had finally entered the room. Liam's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Sloane's smile stiffened, her voice too bright to be genuine. June, that's not fair. We didn't come here for money. We came because we care about you. Care? I echoed softly. That's a new word from you, too. I stood and walked toward the bookshelf, letting the quiet pressure build. You know, I said after Ewan, I hired a financial advisor and a lawyer, Miriam Prescott, smart woman. She told me that sudden money attracts old memories. So I asked her to look into some things for me. Their eyes followed me now, nervous. I pulled Athen folder from the shelf and placed it on the coffee table between us. Turns out people talk in small towns, I continued. I learned a few things about your consulting business, Liam. No clients in 8 months, a second mortgage, 3 maxed-out credit cards. Sloane's hands clasped together, knuckles white. You had someone investigate us? She asked, voice trembling with anger or fear. I had someone protect me, I corrected. It's called being responsible. Liam leaned forward. Mom, it's not what you think. We've had setbacks. Setbacks, I repeated. Or bad decisions dressed as ambition. The clock ticked behind me, a steady reminder that truth doesn't wait for comfort. For the first time, Liam looked small, like the boy who once broke a neighbor's window and couldn't find the courage to confess. Except this time, the damage was much harder to fix. I leaned back in my chair, studying them like a librarian examining a questionable book. You know, Liam, I said, for years I wondered why you stopped calling. I thought maybe I'd done something wrong. Maybe I had smothered you or held you back. But recently I found out the truth. His head snapped up. What truth? Uncle Edward, I said simply. Ring a bell. Liam blinked, guilt flashing across his face before he could hide it. That was a long time ago. Not long enough, I replied. Edward Lang, the same uncle who built his fortune in real estate and made sure everyone knew he valued independence. You thought if you cutties with me, he'd see you as self-made, that he'd reward you in his will. Sloane's voice was barely a whisper. Who told you that? Edward himself years ago. I said before he passed. He sent me a letter, said he admired your drive but not your cruelty. And when he died, he left everything to an animal shelter in Portland. Liam's shoulders sagged. He really did that? Every penny, I said. He believed family isn't measured by blood, but by loyalty. For a moment, no one spoke. Outside, the wind rattled the window, a hollow sound that filled the silence between us. You threw me away. I continued quietly, because you thought someone richer might approve of you. But tell me, Liam, did that approval buy you peace, or did it just make this room feel smaller when you walked back into it? He looked down, shame spreading across his face. For the first time, I didn't see arrogance. I saw regret trying to crawl its way out of pride. It took a slow breath, letting the tension simmer before I spoke again. You came here expecting me to hand you a check or maybe a spare room, I said? But that's not how this story goes. Liam looked up confused. Then what do you want from us? Honesty, I said, and accountability. I reached into the folder again and pulled out a single page. I know you owe about $300,000, credit cards, loans, business debts. You didn't come to rebuild a relationship. You came because you're drowning. Sloane's voice cracked. We just need a fresh start, we thought. You thought I'd save you, I finished. And I might, but not the way you expect. They both stared at me. I'll help you, but only under my terms. I'll loan you $25,000 not for vacations, not for another scheme. Half goes to hiring a bankruptcy attorney. The other half for enrolling in a certified debt recovery program. Liam frowned. That's not nearly enough. It's enough to start over, I said. If you're serious and if we're not, Sloane asked quietly, then you leave this house tonight, I said. And I make sure every person you've borrowed from knows exactly why." For a moment, the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock. Then I added, "There's more. You'll both attend individual therapy, not together, separately. You need to figure out how you became people who use others to survive." Liam's eyes filled with disbelief. "You're serious as a heart attack," I said calmly. "Because love without consequences isn't love. It's permission." Before they could respond, I opened a second envelope that had been sitting on the table since morning. The paper was crisp. The letter had official. I slid it toward Liam. "That I said arrived yesterday from a law firm in Denver. It's from Miles Abbott." The name hit him like a slap. His former business partner, the one he had accused of stealing company funds. Liam hesitated before unfolding the letter. His eyes moved quickly down the page, then froze. "He's demanding repayment," he said, his voice faint. 50,000, I confirmed. "And he's working with the district attorney. You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to make restitution before formal charges are filed." Sloane went pale. "Tomorrow, that's impossible. It's also reality," I said. "Apparently, Miles discovered the missing funds after an audit. He chose not to press charges, yet hoping you'd make things right on your own." Liam rubbed his temples, panic flickering beneath his calm facade. "Mom, this will ruin us." "Not if you act fast and honest," I said. "My offer stands. Take the 25,000, hire the attorney, and face this properly." The grandfather clock chimed behind us. Each strike felt heavier than the last, God's tomorrow. The hour of truth was already on its way. That night the house was too still, the kind of silence that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I sat by the kitchen window with a cup of chamomile tea, watching the moonlight spill across my garden. The tulips I had planted last spring were just beginning to bloom, soft, fragile things that pushed through the cold earth. Anyway, I thought about Liam and Sloane asleep in the guest room down the hall, or at least pretending to sleep. The walls carried every sigh, every whisper. I imagined them whispering about escape routes, or maybe for the first time, about accountability. When I tended my garden, I had learned something simple. If you want a plant to grow, you have to prune the dead branches. It's the same with love. You can't let rot spread and expect the roots to survive. Tomorrow would be their pruning. I turned off the light, leaving the moon to keep watch. There was no anger in me anymore, just a quiet certainty. I wasn't trying to punish them. I was trying to give them the one thing they'd never had before. A chance to start over the hard way, the only way that ever lasts. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and the newspaper. The air smelled of rain and decisions. At 8:47 a.m., the phone rang. I didn't rush to answer it. Some calls are easier to take when you've already decided what you'll say. "Mom." Liam's voice cracked through the receiver. "We've talked all night. We accept your conditions, all of them." I stayed quiet for a moment. "Both of you?" I asked. "Yes, Sloane too. We'll do therapy, the attorney. Whatever it takes. We want to make this right." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Before I make any calls or transfer a single dollar, I want an honest answer." "Okay," he said softly. "If I hadn't won the lottery," I asked, "if I were still the same mother living on a librarian's pension, would you have called me?" The pause on the line was long enough to measure in heartbeats. "No," he said finally. "Probably not. I was too proud, too ashamed. It hurt, but the truth always does before it heals." "Thank you," I said quietly. "That's all I needed to hear." I took another sip of my coffee. "Steady now, Liam," I added. "I forgive you, but forgiveness isn't trust. Trust has to be earned day by day, choice by choice." "I understand," he said. "For your sake," I replied. "I hope you do." The next few weeks unfolded like slow medicine. Liam met with the bankruptcy attorney Miriam recommended, signing papers that made his pride shrink to human size. Sloane started therapy first, then found a job at Asmal Bakery on the edge of town. The woman who once measured life in brand names now spent mornings dusted in flour and sugar. Liam took contract work-fixing databases for local schools. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, every month. He sent me an update proof of payments, counseling receipts. Quiet progress. My sister Lydia checked in often, making sure I wasn't slipping into old habits of rescuing too easily. "You can love someone," she said, "without cleaning up their mess." She was right. Watching them rebuild from the ground up was harder than writing a check, but infinitely more rewarding. It wasn't revenge. It was responsibility finally landing where it belonged. 2 years passed, quiet but steady, like a river smoothing out sharp stones. Liam paid back every dollar Howd to Miles, to relatives, even to Sloane's parents. He never asked for more help. He simply kept working until then. Umbers matched his apology. Sloane surprised everyone, including herself. The bakery job turned into a full-time position, and she discovered she was good at running things when she wasn't chasing shortcuts. One spring afternoon, she sent me a photo of her first paycheck with a note that said, "It feels good to earn it." Miles Abbott mailed me too, confirming that the case was closed. "Your son made it right," he wrote. I read that line 3 times. As for me, I kept my routines, the library, volunteer work, the garden, the quiet evenings with tea. But something inside me had changed. For the first time in years, I could look at Myson and see effort, not entitlement. That was wealth no lottery could buy. Looking back, I realized the real win wasn't the lottery. It was learning the value of boundaries. Love doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Sometimes it means standing firm when it would be easier to give in. I learned 3 things through all of this. First, family without respect is just a group of people sharing last names. Second, money doesn't change character. It only makes it louder. And third, forgiveness is not weakness. It's strength with its sleeves rolled up. If you've ever been hurt by someone you love, remember this. You can forgive them without reopening the door. Some people need to rebuild from the outside before they're ready to walk back in. If you ever find yourself in a situation like mine, sudden visitors, here's what I learned the hard way. First, hire professionals before making promises. A lawyer and a financial advisor can protect both your wallet and your peace of mind. Second, separate your emotions from your accounts. Love isn't a bank transaction. Third, put every agreement in writing. Clarity protects relationships more than generosity ever will. Fourth, don't let guilt become your currency. You don't owe anyone a lifestyle upgrade because you worked hard or got lucky. And finally, if someone wants to come back into your life, make sure they're coming for you, not what you have. Money tests people, but it also reveals truth. If you listen carefully, it tells you who was genuine all along. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I walked through my garden with a cup of tea. The tulips were taller now, bright against the fading light. I stopped by the porch and looked at 2 framed photos on the table, one of Liam at his college graduation, and another taken just a month ago, him standing beside me, smiling honestly for the first time in years. The past was still there in both pictures, but it no longer hurt to see it. It simply reminded me how far we'd all come. Some stories end with payback. Mine ended with peace. I didn't win by being richer. I won by learning that the most valuable inheritance we can give or receive is accountability. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If you've ever faced a moment where love and boundaries collided, I'd love to hear how you handled it. Share your experience in the comments. Your voice might help someone else find courage today. If this story spoke to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We're at every story, every comment. This is June Mercer, and this was my truth. Until next time, take care of your peace. It's worth more than any fortune.